Yes. Hi, I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my feature author of the month of February, award winning author and best selling author to no other than Miss Raven Oak.
Greetings and salutations from the Seattle area where it is very snowy. So, besides being a writer and author, I also love geeking out about weather. So, I love that it snowed.
Likewise, it's snowing here in British Columbia. So, Miss Raven, thank you so much for being part of this podcast, being my feature author of the month. What will be our last novel that we're gonna talk about?
We're going to talk about The Bell Ringer and Other Holiday Tales.
Interesting. What are the central themes explored in the
Well,
collection?
the main theme is holiday. So,
Mm,
the idea of families of different types coming together to celebrate some kind of winter holiday, be that Christmas, Yule, whatever. Um, the stories that are in there are all novellas or shorter works. And so there's a variety in there, a little bit of something for everybody for winter reading. But one of the main themes, again, just like many of my works, is that idea of found family and creating our own families out of the people around us that we care about.
So, how did you integrate speculative fiction elements into traditional holiday narratives?
Well, for one, I always wondered, a couple hundred years from now, if we're in space and we're on a ship, what would something like Christmas look like? Also, the mythos of Santa Claus and Yule trees and all of the things that kind of create the holidays for people in the United States, and other countries. What would those things look like on a spaceship if you have limited resources? Or it's been a couple hundred years, so maybe our idea of what Santa Claus is has changed. Those are things that I could work into a speculative fiction setting and kind of, recreate some of our love of winter and exchanging gifts and things like that, but from the viewpoint and lens of being in space or being in a fantastical setting in a different world.
Interesting. So, in the story, how does the virus induced silence affect the town's dynamics during the holidays?
Well, I mean, each story is a little bit different, but in, for example, The Ringers, um, the town is very withdrawn. Think of like 1600s, 1700s London, the times that Dickens was writing about. The Ringers is kind of my love story to Charles Dickens and some of the things that he was writing about. And so this town is very withdrawn, and they don't celebrate the holidays the way that um, we do. Uh, they're more about everybody needs to work, 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 and contribute to the town and contribute to the magistrate, and he's going to save us and make everything better. Um, and a new family who moves to town, it doesn't really sit well with them that that's the way this town is. And the main character, who is a young girl, she basically sets out to change things. And in doing so, discovers some pretty dark secrets about this town. And that's where the ringers come in, which it kind of came about from my wife, mentioning how creepy some of the lyrics are to Christmas carols. And I was like, imagine if Jingle Bells was really ushering in something evil.
Yes.
So every time you hear a bell ring, instead of being this light, fluffy, positive thing that we're used to thinking about, it was like forbidding, foreboding, and that's kind of what was the impetus for why I wanted to play with that town and the ideas of what makes a holiday a holiday.
So, Miss Raven, what role does homeless bell ringer play in the challenging the town's apathy?
Well, with the bell ringer, that particular story was my pandemic story. You know, a lot of writers have them. They're the story that was kind of floating in our mind when we were on lockdown. And when Washington was kind of in lockdown, it was so eerily quiet outside. I mean, you could walk in downtown Seattle and there just weren't cars traveling around. There wasn't the noise of the city. And I was thinking about what that would feel like, especially during the holidays, because I don't live in downtown Seattle, but I could imagine living down there and being used to the noises of the city and how that might change. And so the main character comes across somebody who's homeless, and he has his own ideas about what causes people to be without housing, and he has his own prejudices about that. And I wanted him to learn a lesson from this unhoused man. And kind of that whole a lot of Christmas stories give you that feel good lesson of why being with family and why being together is important, why helping each other is important. The whole message of the season kind of idea. And so I wanted our main character to learn that lesson in a really hard way from this unhoused man. And that's kind of the central core of that story.
What are the key characteristics of Captain Baines, and how does he approach the mystery of the mobster Santa's death?
Well, he's the kind of guy, he's a space captain. He captains his own ship. This is from the story Old Saint Nick. And he really believes in protecting the members of his crew. He believes in being honest and fighting for his beliefs. And when this mobster Santa ends up dead, um, it becomes a closed spaceship mystery. They talk about in mystery a closed room mystery. It's kind of the same thing but in space. And he is now having to put his needs ahead of his crew's needs, which is not something he wants to do. But if he wants to get out of this alive, that's what he's going to have to do. And so he is at odds with his characteristics through most of the story.
So, in The Ringers, how is the recurring motif of bells used to signify impending danger?
Well, there are these creatures called the ringers, and I have drawn them in my art quite a bit, but I always envisioned them as like these skeletal creatures wearing like really ragged, beat up Santa suits, and they would ride these skeletal horses. Um, but they're really eerie and creepy, and because they are wearing Santa suits, their horses, the bridles have bells, and so when they come to town, they're coming to town to silence troublemakers. And I don't mean troublemakers like criminals. I mean like anybody who would resist and fight against fascism and capitalism and things that are not necessarily good. And so those bells that jingle signify to the people of the town that the ringers are coming. And instead of hearing the jing 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 of jingle bells like we're used to and going, "Oh, Santa's here." It's, "Oh gosh, they're coming. I need to hide. I'm in trouble." And I just worked that in, that jingle bells then had this really creepy element.
Interesting indeed, Ms. Raven. What challenges does Elise face in confronting magical evil in The Ringers?
Well, I mean, even though the story is something that it is for adults, um, Elise, gosh, I think I made her 14 or 15. It's been a while since I wrote that story. Um, she's a young teen, and
Yes.
she is fighting an adult's fight. She's trying to help a town overcome evil. She's trying to master or even tackle her magical powers. They're new to her, so she's not that great at them yet. Um, all while trying to make friends in a new town and all of the complications that come with moving. Um, but she does her best because she believes that's what she needs to do if she's going to be a magic user. So she has a lot to tackle in that story, but I think she does a really good job, especially for a 14 or 15-year old, because I couldn't do that at that age.
Certainly. So, how this reflect a broader themes of courage and sacrifice?
Well, I mean, I tend to write characters that really set out to change the world. And I think that's because as a person, I've always wanted to change the world and leave it a better place than how I found it. And I want my characters to do the same thing. And so when my characters are going up against somebody in a fight, be it either a physical fight, a magical fight, or even just a struggle to do better, um, I tend to put them in the position of trying to leave the world better than how they found it. You know, Elise gets to this new town and sees that the people are struggling. They're not doing well. They're impoverished, they're unhappy. Things are not the way they should be. And so she sets out to research and figure out what's behind these ringers and how this magic happened and how can she fix that? How can she break that spell on this town? And most of my characters are like that, where they try to be good people and do what's best for everybody so that everybody can benefit and do better.
Do better, people. So, how does the curse interpret the traditional role of Santa Claus through the
Well,
character of Simon?
yeah, I part of what happened to that is I kind of woke up from a really weird dream where I just had this thought of what if being Santa wasn't a good thing? We always talk about the myth of Saint Nick and
Yes.
how this guy in theory historically went and delivered gifts to kids and seemed to enjoy the role, and that's how this idea of Santa Claus was created. But what if it was a curse? And so Simon is somebody who in his life struggled to do the right thing, but didn't always do the right thing. He made some bad choices, and that ended up in the death of someone. And as a consequence of that, he was cursed. And so, he is Santa, but he doesn't want to be Santa. He doesn't want to be married to Miss Claus. He doesn't want to deal with toys and children and all of these things that we look at as part of the Santa mythos. He doesn't want any of this, but it is forced upon him. And he can either slowly learn a lesson from that and do better, or he can suffer the consequences of this curse.
So, what moral lessons are conveyed through Simon's journey in the curse?
Really help others, do better for your neighbor. We we tend to live in an insular world where we focus on me and I need to get mine and I need what I need first before we think about the people around us and how we can help others. If we were all helping each other, we wouldn't have the conflicts that we have. But it's because we are selfish creatures that we do. And so my lessons that it kind of worked their way into this curse really focused on how to be less selfish.
Less selfish people. So, Miss Raven, how do the over 30 original art pieces included in the collection enhance the reader's experience of the story?
Well, originally, The Bell Ringers and Other Holiday Tales started as a Kickstarter book. And so, what I really wanted to do with that was not just have these tales in there, but to bring to life the characters and the settings and places and creatures in these stories in a really unique way by actually painting them. Since I can paint, I can bring to life what's in here better if I can actually paint it. It did well in the Kickstarter, and so then it was released in a different format, but still to wide audiences that didn't back the Kickstarter. And it's a lot of fun to be able to go through there and go, oh, that's what the ringers really look like, and oh, hey, that's what the spaceship looks like in Old Saint Nick, and oh, hey, there's the mobster Santa who's dead. There's his body. You get to see in more detail the things that I'm describing in a story. In a story, you may only have a certain amount of space to describe something before readers are like, I'm bored. Can you stop now? But with a painting, it's like, boom, it's right there.
Certainly. So, Miss Raven, what will be your advice for those people out there who want to write their novels?
Don't let yourself be pigeonholed into a corner. I know that there are a lot of authors out there that'll say, oh, hey, romantasy is the big thing right now. You should write that. If you want to write that, totally write it. But if that's not your bag, if that's not something you want to do, that's okay. It is okay to write the stories you want to tell. If that happens to be weird speculative fiction, mystery, cross genre with holiday themes, sure, go for it. Um, if it happens to be, some really weird military sci-fi on Mars with hobbits, go for it. Write the story you want to tell.
Definitely. And stop procrastinating, people. If you have the passion to write, 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 write. Who knows, you will become Miss Raven Oak in the making. So, what will be your short term and long term goals in writing?
Short term, I would definitely like to find a way to be a little less distracted by, oh, hey, it's snowing outside. This definitely hit me this week. We've had snow on and off, and I find the child part of myself wanting to go outside and play in the snow rather than write. And so, yeah, I need to get a little bit better about letting myself get distracted a little less. Long term goals, besides finishing the stuff that's on my plate right now in terms of timelines and deadlines, I would love to participate more in podcasts and online events. As someone with long COVID, I can't go to as many conventions as I used to anymore. I can't do a lot of the outdoor things or outside of my home things that I used to without putting myself at risk. And so online things like this are amazing for disabled people like me because it means we can be part of the conversation and part of the community as well. And so, yeah, I would love to, chat with people online more about all the wonderful things that are out there to read and write about.
Good luck to your goals, Miss Raven. So, the bell ringer, in what ways do the stories challenge traditional holiday tropes and offer fresh perspectives?
Well, I'm always somebody who likes to twist things and flip them upside down on their head. And so, again, you have something where instead of this really cheery Santa Claus, you have this morose and beaten down character who's cursed. You have a space captain who has to put himself first, which is something he doesn't want to do. Uh, and he discovers how important family is in that story. In The Ringers, Elise has to stand up for herself and fight for a town of basically strangers, people she doesn't really know. And in The Bell Ringer itself, the main character has to realize that there is more to the world out there than just his little circle and his little view. There's a big world out there of a lot of different people with a lot of different circumstances. And sometimes things are not as simple as you think they are. And so, all of these different things basically are me taking what people expect from a holiday tale and flipping it upside down, making things just a little creepier, just a little eerier, trying to kind of mix. the holidays with a little bit touch of horror and gothic fantasy and darker sci-fi and things of that nature, just because we don't see that with holiday tales very much. They tend to be very fluffy pieces.
Certainly. So, how does the theme of magic manifest differently across the four stories in the collection?
Well, even though old old Saint Nick is definitely sci-fi, there's this thread of magic that runs through all of them, of the magic of the holidays, of what it means to be family, to be together with people that you care about and who care about you. And so there's that element. And then with the bell ringer, there's again the magic of the holidays lending itself towards helping other people and learning the important lessons that can help us help other people. With the curse, the magic of the curse itself is definitely a lot harder, in your face form of magic than in some of the other stories. And then in the ringers, Elise is an actual practicer of magic, and so that's a lot more fantasy oriented in the side of spec fic than real, in terms of our modern day. So you get a little mix of some urban fantasy and sci-fi in there.
Interesting indeed, Miss Raven. And to wrap up our discussion for today, what is the significance of the title The Bell Ringer and Other Holiday Tales in escapulating essence of the collection?
Well, when I was putting this together, I realized that I had several pieces that were holiday themed. And then I had some ideas of things I wanted to write. The Bell Ringer was the first piece that I wrote that was new for the collection. And because of how hard that story hit me, the lessons in it, the idea of what it means to be without a house, without a home, without family, especially during the holidays. The fact that the holidays are not always cheery for everybody, that it's complicated, as people are. And so I felt that that was a really important story, and that really felt like the title to me. But it wasn't just that story, there were other stories too. And so I decided, I was like, well, if it's a collection, it's okay to say and other tales. But I was like, yeah, that's not simple enough. I need to portray that this has holiday elements in it. And then basically happened with the bell ringer and other holiday tales.
Miss Raven Oak, award winning and best selling author, my future author of the month of February. Can you please invite our listeners to support all your books?
Sure, just head over to www.ravenoak.net. You can find links to all my stories, find out more information about the stories themselves, characters, background stuff, whatever floats your boat. And then you can find all my links to social media there as well. And I'll see you online.
Yes, people, I support Miss Raven Oak because if you support her, more award winning piece and best selling novels to come. So, Miss Raven, thank you for your time.
No problem. Thank you for having me. It's been great to be a guest this February.
Bodycam people, see you soon. So I did already publish our first episode, I think last Monday, Miss Raven. So I will do publish every Monday our
Okay.
3 episodes.